Something that I wanted to go back to because you mentioned how you don't necessarily need French to live in Paris, let's say, because there are bubbles of English speaking people. You can kind of find your way into that group, and you can get by with rudimentary French. And that kind of surprised me because there is that stereotype that French people don't speak English and that they don't want to speak English. They're very proud of their language and their culture, and that it can be hard if you don't adapt to that particular culture, if you
Mm-hmm.
don't learn French. So I
Mm-hmm.
was surprised to hear you say that it's quite easy to get by in Paris without French.
Mm-hmm.
So how do those? Is it just a stereotype that French people don't speak English or don't want to speak English, or is there some truth to that?
It's so funny. There's like some truth to it where they'll be like, I don't speak English. And then they'll say like the most perfect sentence in English. And you're like, really? It really is. It's more that tourists, and I'm not saying it's only Americans. I think people from other cultures do this too. They come to places like Paris and they expect people to speak English. That's where the issue comes in. And yes, French people are very proud of the French language, which I think they have every right to be. It's a beautiful language and it's a very complex language. It was like learning French as an adult is one of like my most proud accomplishments because it is difficult. Very difficult, especially if you're an English speaker, an American English speaker. Like the accent and the sounds you make are so different. But this is something that I used to, I mean, people ask me for like Paris recommendations all the time. Like, and I always say, like, learn how to say hello, learn how to say goodbye, learn how to say please and thank you, and learn how to say in French, do you speak English? Like that, because that's another part of French culture too. It's called in French politesse, which is like translates to politeness. They have all of these unspoken rules around etiquette and things like this. So in France, when you enter into any room, so it could be a store, a restaurant, a bar, anything, you say hello, like no matter what. It's something that really shocks my husband that we don't do this in America. So if you are a foreigner and you don't speak French, but you walk into the restaurant and you can say it like bonjour, like you can say it in the most horrible accent at all. At least you're making the
Uh-huh.
effort and you're not like immediately assume it's the assumption that they speak English is what bothers the French. It's the
Okay.
assumption that everyone speaks English and you can just roll up like with your cowboy hat on and be like howdy or
Mm-hmm.
hello without even
Mm-hmm.
like taking the time to be like hi, excuse me, like I'm so sorry, but like do you speak English? Like that micro 10 seconds will change your entire interaction with a French person. Um because they do speak English, and that's why I say it's easy to get around in Paris because at least they speak enough rudimentary English to get by, like saying things like hello or whatever. Um, so that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So
Yeah.
they do speak English. They don't have a problem speaking English, but they don't want you to assume that they speak English.
Yes.
That's where the
Yes.
rub is. And
Yes.
like every culture has their kind of social rules, right?
Hmm.
The do's and the don'ts, the things that will offend people. Is it fair to say that maybe French people are a little bit more direct in that if you
Well,
break
yes.
one of those rules, they'll remind you? Where
Yes.
in other
Yes.
cultures, I mean, every culture when tourists or visitors come in, they're breaking other rules too. But
Yes.
sometimes, depending on the culture, people just might not say anything. Like
Yes.
I think about Japan. You mentioned that your
Mm,
your your brother lives there. They're known for having a bunch of social rules that I'm sure as Westerners we trample all over. But
yes.
no one says anything because it's also a part of the culture to not be too confrontational,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
But it sounds like in France will let you know.
Oh, they will let you know. They will let you know. They're not shy. Direct is the good word for it. Which it's so funny because it being married to a French person, little things like that are where like my husband and I will sometimes butt heads or like we'll have to like kind of stop and have a little bit of a conversation because I'm, the sort of like optimistic soft American who's like, we can do anything and like everything's great. Where my husband, like French, are more direct. They're definitely more pessimistic. They love to complain. They call it the national sport. And that's like from the mouth of French people. I'm not even the one who came up with that. But
Uh-huh.
I constantly have to say to my husband, like, you can say exactly that, but in a nicer tone of voice. And he's like, well,
Yeah.
you don't have to be so sensitive.
Uh,
So I think that too is another reason why this like rude stereotype pops up a lot, because that is a big cultural difference between, I think, North Americans and, because I would include Canada in that too, but with North Americans and French people. But French people will do it like amongst themselves too, because I went through many phases of learning French where I was so embarrassed by my accent or so embarrassed when I would mess something up or I would get grammar wrong. But like a French person will correct another French person. So I learned to
mm.
kind of let go of that because it's a part of how they are. It's a part of their culture.
You're actually being included in the
Right,
culture.
right, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, that's good.